This podcast is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. Learn more at listenfrederick.com.
Welcome to the award-winning Rich in Life podcast. We're the podcast that dives deep into the true meaning of wealth. We're going beyond money. We're going into mindset, purpose, and the choices that shape our success. In each episode, we're going to bring you inspiring stories, expert insights, and the real conversation to help you build a life that's rich in every way. So get ready to elevate your thinking, embrace new possibilities, and unlock the wealth that truly matters. So sit back, tune in, and let's learn how to be rich in life.
Let me paint a picture for you. You've had a genuinely solid stretch, real progress. The numbers are moving, work is actually working. And yet you sit down to check in with yourself, and the overwhelming feeling is that you're still not there where you want to be. And it's not like you're behind, it's that this inherent feeling that you're not enough. When the quote unquote there that you're comparing yourself to, it's some version of the end goal, the number that you wrote down at the beginning of the year, or maybe even 5 years ago. It's the really big one, the one that still feels really far away no matter what you do. But what if I told you that the goal isn't the problem? It's the measuring stick. Welcome to Rich in Life. I'm Danielle Rizzo. Today, we're talking about one of the quietest forms of self-sabotage that I've seen derail genuinely capable people, and it's measuring your current progress against your final destination and what to do instead. Here's the thing why big goals, and I mean like the really, really, really big ones, like the 5-year plans, the ones that truly matter, the ones that are keeping you up at night with excitement or anxiety or both. They're supposed to feel big. That's the point. You set them because they represent something meaningful, something beyond where you currently are. But there's this like hidden cost to keeping that big goal, right? Like it's your primary reference point in every single day, in every single task. And that cost is this: when you measure your daily progress against your ultimate destination, the gap almost never shrinks fast enough to even feel meaningful or like you're doing anything. So let's say your goal is financial freedom. It's a number, it's a status, it's a milestone that's 2 or 3 years out. Every morning you wake up and check where you are against that number. And every morning the distance is still remaining enormous. And that progress that you made yesterday, it barely registers against the scale. So psychologists actually call this the goal gradient theory. And it's the idea that motivation increases as we get closer to a goal. Makes sense. The problem is that when the goal is so far away, the gradient is nearly flat. You're not close enough to feel the pull. You feel stuck even though you know you're doing, and you're stuck on this hamster wheel. I've actually seen this play out with a client of mine just recently, which is why we're talking about this. There were strong margins in their project. There was real revenue. They were doing the things day in, day out, and a business that by any reasonable external standard was working. But they came to me feeling like they weren't actually moving at all because the metric that he was measuring against wasn't realistic in what he was doing day to day. And from where he was, it felt miles and miles away. So his progress wasn't invisible because it wasn't real. It was invisible because his ruler was the wrong size. That makes sense. So there's this science of small wins. There's a professor at Harvard Business School who spent years studying what actually motivates people at work. And her research found that something completely reframes this conversation. The biggest driver of positive inner work life, meaning your motivation, creativity, engagement, and emotional state at work, wasn't achieving the big goal. It was making progress. Any progress, even small progress on any given day, was the most powerful predictor of how someone felt and performed. She called it the progress principle. And this is the really, really, really important part. The progress didn't have to be monumental to the matter. It just had to be visible and it had to be recognized, which means that the problem isn't that you're not making progress. The problem is that you're measuring something in a system that isn't designed to show you the progress. So let's break this down, right? If you measure a 2% gain against a goal that requires 100% growth, you feel nothing. 2% to 100%, you're going to feel nothing. When you measure that same 2% gain against where you were last week, that feels enormous. It's momentum. It's proof that what you're doing is working. I talk about this all the time with my client, that the 2% as the 4% as the 10% as the 15%, and it's all getting you closer and closer to the goal. The goal isn't 0 to 100. So our goal didn't change, but the lens that we saw the progress through did. And the lens determines everything about how you feel and whether you keep going or whether you feel defeated. So I want you to stop measuring your progress against the full distance to your biggest goal. Start measuring it in 5% increments from where you are right now. Not 5% of the total goal, not that 0 to 100, but 5% better than current, 5% further than last week, and 5% more than what you knew how to do last month. And if you keep doing the 5%, the 5%, the 5%, it's going to add up. And this matters for a few reasons. First, it makes progress achievable on a timeline that your brain can actually feel motivated by. A 5% improvement is close enough to feel real and possible, and a 5% transformation feels abstract and distant. This also keeps you in the game. The number one reason people abandon their biggest goals isn't because of lack of talent or effort. It's that they can't see enough progress fast enough to believe it's working. They don't get that dopamine hit after everything that they're doing that they think should be getting a result. So they end up thinking it's for nothing. They change the plan and the cycle goes on and on and on. The 5% framework solves that. Every week has a win. Every month has a story, and you stop feeling like you're standing still. But back to this client I was talking to you about, right? So when we stopped measuring against a certain full goal and started asking what's 5% better than last quarter, his per project margins changed. His conversation rate on proposals changed. His average client contract value changed, and suddenly the movement was everywhere. He wasn't just standing still and feeling like his efforts were for nothing. He had just been using a ruler that made his steps look like millimeters. So here's what I want you to do this week, and it's called the Next 5% Audit, and it takes about 15 minutes. I want you to name your current baseline. Pick one area of your life or your business where you feel stuck or behind. Not the big goal, the baseline. Where are you right now specifically? What does current actually look like in numbers, in behaviors, in reality? Then I want you to identify what 5% better looks like. Not what arrived looks like, not what success looks like, just 5% better than current. If you're converting 1 in 5 sales conversations, 5% is 1 in 4.5. If you're working out twice a week, 5% is a little more consistency on those two days. If your average client engagement is 3 months, 5% better is finding one way to deepen that relationship. So what does 5% better look like for you? And then I want you to make that your only metric for 30 days. For 1 month, that 5% is the only metric that you're chasing. Not the 100%, not the final goal. Just that one increment of the 5%. What does that look like for you for 30 days? Check against it weekly, and at the end of the 30 days, do the audit again from the new baseline. This is how you're going to build momentum. Not in a dramatic leap towards the horizon off into the sunset, but in a series of small, visible, compound steps, each one measured against where you were, not against where you eventually want to be. What is your next 5%? I want to leave you with something that I think gets lost in the ambition culture. The purpose of a big goal is not to make you feel inadequate until you reach it. It's to give you a direction to walk in. It's more of a compass, not a destination. You're allowed to feel good about the ground you covered while you're still walking. You're allowed to celebrate the 5% when you're building toward the 100%. In fact, you actually have to, because the emotional feel is going to give you that hit of dopamine that you need to hit the big goal, to build up and build up those small ones along the way. If your measuring stick is making real progress, feeling like standing still, change the measuring stick. The goal hasn't moved. You're just finally going to be able to see how close you're getting to it.
Live radio, local podcasts, the Frederick Podcast Network at listenfrederick.com.